Welcome all back, everybody, to Unpopular Opinion. We're going to get right into segment number one, which is what we have been playing this week. Now, let me go ahead and get this right out the way now. There are a couple games that we have just started playing that we can't touch on just yet because I haven't, and the reason behind that is because I just haven't had enough time with it yet. And when I say I haven't had enough time with it yet, that means anything that I've started to play that's under an hour, I really don't feel comfortable really discussing because I just don't know enough about it yet. That would be Assassin's Creed, Mirage, and Lords of the Fallen. Now, on our next episode, we will be talking about both. Because at that point, I can comfortably say that I will have enough hands-on time with both to be able to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about it before we get into the reviews for both of those games. Because yes, both of those games will have an under review coming for it. After the one this week, I think we're doing NBA 2K24 this week. Next week, we will be doing Lies of P because I feel comfortable that we will be done with that game by then. I think we are also going to do Warhammer Darktide. I think we have coming up as an under review game as well. We are going to be doing Spider-Man 2, the Metal Gear Solid collection. I do definitely want to touch on that once it does come in and we get a chance to start playing it. Because I've been kind of looking forward to that coming out. I don't know if those are remasters. I guess we'll find out when we get it in. But kind of looking forward to that. But let's go back to, again, we've been playing a lot of Lies of P. I talked a lot last week about Lies of P. So I don't want to kind of just repeat myself from what I said last week about the game. But having played probably 10 more hours of it from the time that I talked about it a couple weeks ago, I can say that to me, the game to me actually opens up more and gets better as it goes on. Some people are probably like, does the game kind of stay the same? Do you kind of get the same type of thing? Are the enemies just kind of the same? Because, in some of these From Software, I don't want to say knockoffs, but like some of these From Software inspired games that come out, the mistake a lot of them tend to make is they will use the same kind of enemy, but just give them a fresh coat of paint, essentially. They just reskin them, but give them the same kind of, programming, the same kind of technique, the same kind of fighting style, stuff like that. But all they do is they just kind of reskin the NPC, right? Now we know that to be true for a lot of kind of, those type of games that have that quote unquote inspiration to it, right? Lies of P, it does that, but not in the way, not very, it doesn't do it often. It doesn't do it all the time. It doesn't do it to where you start to feel like it's starting to get repetitive. Everything's starting to be the same. They do add a lot of different variations to them. Now, some of the enemies you will see kind of carry out from world to world that you kind of venture into. And I will say this because I'm actually just getting past this area now. And I don't know if this is something that's just has to bring true. Every From Software game and every inspired From Software title has to have this one area that's insanely difficult. Has to have a poison type swamp that you got to traverse through. You got to get yourself poisoned, or in what this game calls either decay or corruption. You got to trickle through this area. You got these swamp type people that you got to fight off most of the time. And then at some point you're going to come into an area where you got this far off, either giant with a bow and arrow that's raining down arrows from a distance from you, and large ones at that. Or they're shooting large cannonballs at you from a distance. This level that I'm just getting through has all of those. And I'm like, oh great. Another From Software inspired swamp area that I got to traverse. And like I said, every game of this type of genre has it. And it's always one of those areas that you come to and you dread fighting through it because it's a pain in the ass. You know it. You can go through every single Dark Souls title, Bloodborne title, well, there's only one. You can go through Sekiro. It has its own. Trust me, I know. You can go through all of those titles. Neo, Mortal Shell. You can go through all of those games and pinpoint that area that has it. And for Pinocchio, well, the Liza P, this is it. So yes, this I'm trying to put it into words here. You gotta bear with me. I'm trying to get into the best words and context I possibly can here. But they give you enemy variation types that you've seen early on in the game, but have tweaked them to where they are the same, but they're not the same. If that makes any sense to you. So essentially, they have a different moveset. They may carry a different weapon that does a shit ton more damage than what you're accustomed to. And if you play Liza P, you know the puppets, like the police puppets that have the rifles that shoot at you. Fuck those guys. I can't say that enough. I hate that enemy type. I hate any enemy type in those games that is a ranged attacker. I hate it. And if any of you guys have played, and not saying that that's a bad decision on the developer's part to create them, because I think it's smart. It has a balance to these levels that, like, you look, if you didn't have them there, it would have been just, people would have been like, okay, it's just too easy. Those guys make that level fucking ridiculously hard. And then on top of that, you give us two of the fire big baddies that we got to fight through. One you have to fight with at the very, very beginning of the level. The second one is halfway through that you don't have to fight if you don't want to, but if you're one of those that's like a completionist and you got to get every item, there's two items down there that he's in, and you're in like this tight little room, so there's no room to really kind of maneuver around him. So you really got to kind of fight him straight on. And then it's one of those areas that you start to question yourself, like before you go down the ladder and you're looking down on them and you see the two items, you start to question to yourself, are these items worth going down there to get? Unfortunately, those two items, like the items that he's actually around, to me, I think they are worth it because they give you some stuff that will help you out with your crafting, which, you know, if you play the game enough, you know that some of the crafting materials are not in huge abundance here. They're pretty small. Excuse me. Like, the game only gives you enough resources to level up max level 3 weapons that you want. So you have to be very, very careful about which weapons you want to max level, because the game's only going to allow you 3. Once you hit those 3, there's not going to be any more resources throughout the course of the game for you to get to level up to max level those weapons, unless you start New Game Plus. Okay? So, like, this swamp world that I'm in gives you all, and on top of that, they give you the one enemy that I hated from the world before. And if you guys have played Liza P, you guys are well aware of the clown puppet. The one that kind of bounces around and has the slingshot fucking arm. The one that, like, can leap. Well, guess what? In the world right after that, in the swamp level, you have to fight him again. A different variation of him. His moveset is very, very similar, but his timing and the way that he does those moves is vastly different. And instead of fire, he's electric. So they do give you some of the same enemies that you're going to have to encounter, but there are different variations of them. But, I mean, again, to me, Liza P is one of those games that as you play, it progressively gets better. Like, I keep wanting to find out more and more the lore and the story. And the lore and the story is very, very interesting. Like, I'm getting closer and closer to finding out more and more of the truth. And to me, it like that's what a Souls type game should always be about. Like, build this lore and then build that game around that lore. Don't create the game and then the levels and the characters and then kind of hope that the lore follows, because then excuse me, because then it doesn't start to make it stops to make sense. But whereas in a game where you take the story and the lore and the characters and then you shape the game around that, is tends to be much better, much better. I think Neo 2, I think, did it perfectly well. Mortal Shell, I mean, even though I like Mortal Shell, but it wasn't what it could have been. I'm hearing Lords of the Fallen does it very, very well as well. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring, obviously we know those games are always going to be story and lore first. And Lies of P falls firmly within that grasp. So if we're going to be looking at contenders for the best Soulsborne type of game that's not From Software, Lies of P and, from what I'm gathering, Lords of the Fallen are going to be the two front runners. Now, I haven't played Lords of the Fallen yet. I've gotten character creation. I haven't gotten much into any of it yet. So I can't offer any opinions. On next week's show, I will gladly talk a little bit about it. Right now, I can't really touch on it. So those are going to be your two front runners for that genre game. So, I mean, just if you haven't played Lies of P yet and you like those type of games, you're doing yourself a disservice by not playing it. You definitely need to play it. It's worth it. It's worth your time. It's worth the frustration. Trust me, I know. My son has been stuck on the same boss for like 2 days now. He's starting to feel that Soulsborne the Soulsborne anger. He's starting to get that now, and that makes me so happy. It really does. Um. Yeah. Anyhow, the second game we've been playing is we started playing Warhammer Darktide. It's actually another game in the Warhammer franchise. The game's available on Game Pass if you have the Xbox Game Pass or PC Game Pass. Warhammer Darktide is on there. It's a game that puts you in the world of Warhammer 40K, and the way that the game plays is it's a horde-based killer. Now, what do I mean by that? Is it's a game that you have to fight off as you progress through the level to the end, or what some games call it, like the safe room. You have to fight off hordes of enemies. You have your generic 1-2 shot kill the enemy type of deal, headshots, one hit kill. And then you have like your overgrown monsters that are much harder to bring down. The ones that can, incapacitate your teammates, and you got to kill them before your teammate can get back up. If your teammate gets knocked off the world, he's kind of holding onto the ledge, and you got to pull him back to safety. It's one that actually does require the 4-player co-op that's available in it. It's another one of those games that I don't necessarily think brings much to the table in the way of anything different. We saw this with Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead kind of started this whole thing. Back 4 Blood tried it. What was the other game where there was 4 of y'all and you had to hunt down a monster? Evolved. Evolved, to me, actually, I thought probably did it the best. Kind of add different variations to it. I think it kind of did the best. So, in a way, I think Evolved, but unfortunately, Evolved met like an untimely death, and it's just I think it could have done a lot more, but just didn't have the legs. It didn't have the audience, especially in the initial release of it, because I think it had such problems at the launch, and that killed most of its audience. But it was a game that actually had promise, and they actually tried to reboot it in a way. But I don't think it kind of took off the way it definitely needed to. I think the audience had already at that point kind of caught it and left already. So unfortunately, I think Evolve was one of those games that could have possibly done it. But Warhammer Darktide just kind of falls into that realm of games that we have seen before, and unfortunately doesn't really add much in the way of anything new to the game formula. The only thing that's really, really different here, and it might hit some people in the quote-unquote right way, is the fact that it's a Warhammer game and takes place in the 40K universe. Yeah, that's the only thing I can really see as far as that goes that people can kind of gravitate to. And I'll admit, I kind of did. I saw it. I was like, you know what? I haven't really been a fan of. I mean, I've liked some of the Warhammer titles that have come out. I'm really kind of anxious to kind of see, the Space Marines second one coming out. I do kind of want to play that one, but unfortunately, I think the game formula of sending waves of enemies at you, you clear the kill room out, you move on to the next area while you still got enemies chasing you or coming out of different corners or different avenues. Before you get to the end, you set up your ultimate defenses, hold off the giant hordes that are coming, including the heavy bosses that come, and then you escape at the very end. Where it kind of gives you like that sense of the last surviving second that we have before we got to escape. You hop on the plane or the helicopter and you get out of there. This again follows in that same formula. So I mean, is it good? Yeah, you could probably get a good couple of nights co-op. Get your buddies together. Y'all hop on. Some of you guys have some drinks and play through a couple worlds or a couple levels of Darktide, and you'll probably have a decent time with it. It's not one you're going to sit down and consistently play level for level all the way through for a long period of time, unfortunately. At least I never got that feeling from it. You may feel differently, which is possible, which is perfectly okay. That's your opinion. This is mine. It just wasn't really a game much for me. I could film a good 2 or 3 episodes of that game, really, and then I'm kind of done with it. Like I would get through I'm probably through like 3 or 4 worlds of that game, levels already of that game, and I think maybe 1 or 2 more levels of that game, and then I'm probably good. I can delete it off my hard drive because we all know that hard drive space nowadays is a freaking commodity. And for a game like this that you could probably get 2 or 3 good nights worth of fun out of, just doesn't really seem it for me. You know what I mean? So that's Warhammer Darktide. So let us take a quick break. We're going to regroup here, and we're going to come back with segment number 2, which what really grinds my gears, and we're going to talk about the PS5 Slim model announcement, and of course the deluxe editions and the hidden. Come play this game 2 or 3 days early, but pay us $100 for the game. We'll be right back.